In America, the anti-corporate Occupy movement's aiming to surge back into the headlines on its first anniversary. Activists are rallying support for demonstrations in New York before they plan to descend on Wall Street once again on Monday. The movement spread across the US last year with mass rallies against economic inequality taking place in dozens of cities. Police cracked down on several demonstrations, unleashing tear gas and making thousands of arrests and evicting tent camps from public parks. Let's go live now to New York and speak with activist Maupin. Now, activists have not applied, I understand, for a legal permit to occupy Wall Street on Monday. What response do you think they'll get from the authorities?
Well, in New York City, there are demonstrations all the time that are peaceful, legal, strolls where people march down the street with signs. But Occupy Wall Street has changed history because it's an unorthodox political movement. It's a movement not about creating theater and not about walking with signs. It's a movement about confrontation. The confrontation between millions of mainly youth, working-class youth in this country who have no chance of finding a job or decent employment and are going out into the streets and demanding justice. I know on Monday there's planned civil disobedience. People are planning to shut down intersections and get arrested. There's all kinds of plans to, do everything they can to use their bodies as weapons against the 1%, which is driving to force the people of this country and the people of the world into deeper and deeper poverty while they enrich themselves with profits and with wars and with death and destruction.
So pursuing confrontation, intentionally breaking the law, doesn't that undermine the Occupy Wall Street movement, particularly when so many supporters want to pursue legal protest?
Well, I think there's a whole history of civil disobedience in this country being used as a means of expressing oneself. And we're in a situation where people are being illegally foreclosed on all throughout the country. Police are illegally murdering people in the streets. So if people who are going to oppose the injustices that are going on are just going to passively march like they've been doing for centuries, that's not going to solve the answer. People are needing to confront the status quo and to fight back. And that's what's going on.
Well, like your reaction to the story we're following at the moment here on RT, social network Twitter, it's been ordered by a New York judge to hand over the tweets of an Occupy activist. What sort of precedent does this case create?
Well, it certainly shows how threatened they are by Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street has captured the imaginations of so many millions of working-class people in this country, and it's caused such an uproar because so many people understand the concept of the 99% and the 1%. And that scares the 1% and their government very much, and so they're going to be cracking down on civil liberties all the time. The NDAA, I think the National Defense Authorization Act, was probably a direct response to Occupy Wall Street. There's so much fear in the power because for so long the people of the United States have very passively sat by and accepted all of the right-wing measures by the government. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, the working class is in motion again, youth are in motion, and suddenly they're starting to fear.
Many would say there's a big flaw in the whole movement. It's been criticized in the media for lacking a unified program and a clear leader. Is that still the case?
Well, if one looks at all of the revolutions in the past, they always began with very vague ideas. The Mau Mau revolt in Kenya was a revolt that began with the vague slogan of land and freedom. The Russian Revolution began as a revolt against the Tsar, and the Bolsheviks eventually transformed it into a struggle for peace, land, and bread. Revolutions often begin with vague kind of understandings and outpourings, and eventually, the demands develop as the struggle matures and gets to the point of actually, seizing power.
But is the movement really looking perhaps for an emergence of a new political power, a political party will actually listen to their concerns? After all, many would say that the main political system in the US is not meeting the demands of so many.
Absolutely. And, the Occupy movement has largely rejected both the Democrats and the Republicans, the two wings of corporate rule in the United States. And they are very much exploring alternatives to the Democrats and the Republicans and alternatives to the capitalist system. Many are looking into socialism and communism as an alternative to this system where profits rule and we just get wars, we just get home foreclosures, we just get mass unemployment. Yet all this wealth exists, but it is not utilized for human good.
The movement appears to have lost momentum in recent months. I think that's fair to say. Do you think it'll be able to recapture its former nationwide and indeed worldwide strength? We saw a lot of following, of course, outside of the US last year.
I would say without a doubt. If one looks at the world right now, if one looks at what's happening in the Middle East, in Spain, in Greece, everywhere there's a confrontation going on against the 1%. So the idea that somehow the U.S. is exceptional and it's just a small passing phase, I mean, the U.S. is part of a world capitalist economy, and that world capitalist economy is in a state of collapse. So absolutely we're going to see more revolts. They may take on a different character. Organized labor with Chicago, the Chicago teachers strike, that may become more prominent than it was in the early days of Occupy Wall Street, but there's going to be more confrontations as the system dies.
Live from New York, Maupin from the International Action Center. Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts.